So the Browns, man, they lost 21-7. The game was a whole lot worse than what the score was.
Mhm.
Like the Browns, like two things can be true. The Browns was like right there the whole time, but they was never really there at
Mhm.
all during the entire game. And you said, you was gonna take some time to assess and evaluate the situation, and you've reached a point that the Browns should blow it up. I'm there. I was there before they played this game against Kansas City. I planted my flag. I'm pretty sure I will be wrong when it comes down to it at the end of the season. But I'm on the same page. So I done talked enough about this. I'm gonna let you cook. Go ahead.
So I'm gonna put it this way: when you evaluate the Browns the last 5 years, I believe Stefanski and Barry came in together, and they've been here for 5 years. That's more than enough time to look at a person's resume, see what they've done in the draft and free agency, on the field product, and at the end of the day, 5 years is in, and we have one playoff win. One. Now, I would say this. I do think that there's some difficulties when it comes to certain decision making, because I do think the higher ups with Paul and Jimmy, they kind of still have their hands on in a lot of situations. They have their blueprints. They have their, they're pushing this narrative and saying you got to do this, and you got to play this guy, and you got to have this around, and you got to do this. And I think they need to stop that. But at the end of the day, if Andrew and Kevin can't work with those guys, they got to go, and you got to find somebody that can work with them well. That's just what it is. Like, it comes down to, for Kevin, it comes down to, what have you done on the field? On the field, what have you done? You are under 500 in 5 years. You have one playoff win. Yes, you have two coach of the years. Outstanding job by you. But you have one playoff win. At the end of the day, it's about wins and losses. It's not about going, how many regular season wins can I get. It's not about how many playoff victories can I get, the morale of the team. It's about, can you win? Can you go deep in the playoffs? You've had more than enough talent on the team to make runs, and you haven't figured out a way to do it. I'll even say this. How much have you developed the guys that's come in? We look at the draft picks that Andrew Berry brought in. I think of JOK is probably the biggest one that kind of developed over time,
That's
right?
the best draft pick he's made
That's the
during
best
this
draft pick
entire
he's
team.
made.
Yeah.
Like, but besides that, in 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, like, who have you brought in that's really been a true, besides JOK, has been a true contributor to the team? And that's five drafts. And two of those drafts, you gave up your first and second round pick for a young man that has not produced at all for the Cleveland Browns. At all. So for me, and there's nothing against Andrew, we're the same age. I'm rooting for him, but this may not be the best fit for you. If you can't make decisions, or if somebody's over your head helping you or push you to make those decisions, he got to go. And the same thing with Kevin. 5 years is enough for me. And I'm like, I hear people going back and forth. I'm just not sure if he should stay or he should go. That's your answer. If you're not sure he should stay, then he needs to go. Like, it's
Mm.
just that simple. So for me, I think Kevin may be a better offensive coordinator than a head coach. I'm just not sold he can be a true leader of men. I'm looking at different rosters. I'm like, dog, like, you had a shot to be, like, you brought in key free agents. You couldn't make, I don't know if he doesn't connect well with, like, the Odell Beckhams, with the Jarvis Landrys, with the Jadavion Clowneys, with whoever else you brought in. But there always seemed to be some type of bickering going on, some type of unsettlement. You have Baker Mayfield, who's playing his best football when he leaves Cleveland. Like, when he's playing his best football as a quarterback in Tampa Bay right now. And he should be he should have played his best football. Should have been signed back here if you truly developed him well. So for me, it's like it's in the pudding. 5 years is enough. I've seen it. We are average at best with Kevin Stefanski. We are average at best with Andrew Berry. I need
You know
some
what's
new
funny?
people.
I said the same thing. I said the truth of the matter is, outside of me liking and respecting them as people, I
Yes,
can't find many reasons to say, okay, either one should come back to be the general manager or the head
it's
coach of this
none.
team.
It's
Because the
none.
reality is they are average. And right now, Kevin is a below average as a head coach. I pointed out yesterday to the lack of consistency. Part of our show was Mike gave us, was it eight categories to choose from to see if Kevin Stefanski was a good head coach or not. And by the time we got to the end of it, bro, I was like, you know what? It's too many inconsistencies. And I said this when he took over in 2020, that was during COVID. Now, COVID was a tough time on everyone, right? Let alone somebody that's a brand new head coach in the NFL that's trying to figure things out, that's trying to learn his new team, etc. Right? We ended up making the playoffs that year. So, in my mind, when things get back to a sense of normal, you should be able to add on to what you've already done. And it's really up from here. But it seemed like any time that the Browns have put anything positive out there on paper and we had expectations to run it back next year, it's like whatever we put out there was figured out and the Browns was right back where we started at.
Yeah.
You know, and so when I hear a former player talk like that, the first thing I thought about, if this was Cecil Shorts and Cecil Shorts was inconsistent for 5 years and they was having that question, they would have cut your ass.
Been gone.
You would have been gone.
No question about it.
You would have been gone. So it's like I can understand that evaluation. You know, we talked about a guy who, you know, was he a master motivator? Like, was he a guy that can adapt to situations changing throughout the game? You know, could he control egos? And I think about what happened when Odell was here. Him and Baker didn't get along. Odell is sent home, ultimately released, ends up in LA. Shortly after that, Baker is no longer here. And it's like, you talk about the Paul and the Jimmy aspect. This is just straight speculation from where I stand. But I think that Baker Mayfield pissed off Jimmy Haslam more than he pissed off Kevin Stefanski or Andrew Berry. Because the whole adult in a room conversation, that started with the owner. And whatever happened at the end of that season, you know, I can remember being at 92.3 The Fan and I was doing a lot of post-game shows. We beat the Lions. Baker refused to talk to the media, right? We ended up getting eliminated from the playoffs. Baker opts, I'm finally going to sit down. Now, all of a sudden, I don't want to play with this bad shoulder. This was the same year that Baker said, ultimately, I make the decision on if I play or not. We all have known that Jimmy Haslam can be an emotionally driven owner, right?
Oh, for sure.
And so
for sure.
if Baker pissed him off that bad, like something was going to happen. Something was going to get done. And when you talk about, you know, you said it, if you either need to find guys that can work with Jimmy Haslam and Paul DePodesta or guys who got that alpha in them enough to challenge
can
these
challenge them.
dudes
Yes.
and said,
Yes.
no, I'm not doing this.
Yes.
You know, and when that situation came about, like now it's making me wonder, what if Andrew Berry would have had more pushback and be like, I don't think this is the right decision. What if Andrew Berry or Kevin Stefanski be like, yeah, but let's think about this long term. It's like nobody challenged Jimmy because Jimmy is Jimmy. And you can't have a bunch of yes men around you if you're going to have success. You know, you just made me think about it because in your notes you said Jimmy is Jerry Jones. Remember the draft when I think Johnny Manziel was on the board and Jerry wanted to draft him, and I think his son was like, no, and they ended up drafting Zach Martin with that pick. You need somebody to challenge somebody that got an ego like that. You got to have that. You got to have that. And to be totally honest with you, man, like I think the Browns need to blow it up and start over too. I think the reality of the situation is the longer we wait and we operate in this fearful mindset, that we're going to put ourselves further and further behind the 8 ball. It's a hard thing to realize something that you want to work ain't working out and be willing to step away from it and try something different. That is so hard to do in life, and clearly it is in the NFL. So, you know, before we move on to our final topic, man, we're going to check some of these comments. Y'all drop y'all thoughts in the chat. Y'all tell us what y'all think. Y'all think that the Browns should blow it up or, you know, one or the other should come back? B Skrill says, salute, fellas. Walling Check David says, you need San Francisco that will put you over the top. You need a small forward that will put you over the top. Finney Smith is not my answer. JB Smooth says, Laverta's in the last year of his deal and you probably can't afford it. May not be worth it going into the luxury tax to re-sign him. Let's see here. Ray says, just getting hip to the Ultimate Universe. You guys are like the MCU now. Hey, man, the Ultimate Universe is really taking over. Like, hey, we got big plans in 2025. All that's coming soon. Shout out Self says, I can't believe how bad Ben Simmons is now. I was shocked to even see Ben Simmons on the court yesterday.
Unbelievable. I remember all the Ben Simmons hype. I remember watching his documentary like on HBO and stuff. I was a Ben Simmons fan. He to me it's all mental and he just went downhill. My gosh.
A couple more before we move on. Shadow Self says Kevin Stefanski's body language, demeanor is what pisses me off. Every time something bad happens, he's rolling his eyes and doing other things like it's everyone else's fault, not his, like he is better and smarter.
He blames the referees a lot. To me, that's not what a head coach should be doing. You're not going to blame, oh, they missed this call, or they shouldn't have called that. No, take responsibility for what you've done. Because last time I checked, I can question your discipline on your team of how many penalties y'all have had the last 5 years you've been in charge.
That is
Like,
very
don't
true.
blame other people. Like, you've been one of the most penalized teams since you've been here, bro. Like that's what it's frustrating, man. I'm sorry.
All right, one more before we get on to the last segment. JB Smooth also says, I don't think it's worth changing regimes and tearing it down again. Why are other teams able to recover from subpar years without total rebuilds? I think those teams got a healthier and more solid foundation than the Browns do, JB
Correct.
Smooth. Like G.
Correct.
Bush made this point yesterday. The Browns went from a 10-11 win team last year that made the playoffs to a team that's currently sitting at 3-11. So it's not like you went from a playoff team to just missing the playoffs to whatever. You went from a playoff team to god awful.
That's
And that
unacceptable.
gap in disparity, like that raises questions about okay, the inner workings or the nuance of the overall organization. Yeah, other teams can bounce back from not making the playoffs and recover right away and keep it moving. But those teams, in my opinion, just has had more sustained success and a more sustained, probably healthier culture than what the Cleveland Browns has had. Speaking of the Cleveland Browns.